This great Hollywood director has been nominated for the Academy Award 3 times. He began his career at the BBC, and at the age of 27 launched his own commercial production company, which very quickly became an international success. 12 years later, he would direct his first movie, The Duelist, starring Harvey Keitel, and then follow that up with the monster hit Alien and the cult classic Blade Runner. Then came another string of successes, Thelma and Louise, starring Susan Sarandon, Gina Davis, and a young Brad Pitt. Hannibal, with Anthony Hopkins. Black Hawk Down, which won 2 Oscars. Kingdom of Heaven, with Liam Neeson and Orlando Bloom. American Gangster, with Denzel Washington. Robin Hood, and Prometheus. But he might always be best remembered for the character of Maximus in Gladiator, which received 5 Academy Awards, including Best Film and Best Actor for Russell Crowe. This great Hollywood director is Ridley Scott.
I'm here in my office in London, and this is the office of RSA in London, and also Scott Free, and which I started this company 42 years ago. It's a long time ago now. Thinking that eventually advertising would leave me, or I'd leave advertising, and I didn't. I'm still very much involved in advertising, I'm pleased to say. And so the Scott Free side of things obviously has grown into a pretty established, feature film production company. And I'm in here today because I'm shooting a film, actually a relatively short schedule for me, 9 weeks. I'm shooting a film here in about 3 weeks' time, and I'm pre-producing out of here. I had a pretty conventional childhood in terms of a conventional, family life. My dad, when I say he was in the army, he was only in the army because the war broke out, and then got attached to the Royal Engineers, and then eventually got fairly closely attached to the planning of what eventually would be called Mulberry Harbour, or D-Day. At the end of the war, my dad was asked to take off his uniform and put on a suit and be taken out to Germany to join in with what was the tail end of the Marshall Plan and what would be called the CCG, which is the Control Commission for Germany. So I was going out to Germany in 1947 on a troop ship with a label attached to my collar in case I got lost. And we went and lived in Hamburg and then Frankfurt in the American zone. And then I was sent to school in Wilhelmshaven, which is fundamentally a U-boat barracks for the Baltic Command for the U-boat part of the German Navy. And so I used to walk past 200 U-boats every morning, still cocooned in that we discovered spray plastic, and so they're all bobbing up and down the harbour. And I then stayed there until right through, managed to get into a secondary modern school. I missed the 11, I could never pass the 11 plus anyway, because I was been to 10 schools, so I had no idea what the hell I was doing. And there's always this expectation of adults say, well, you'll catch up. You don't know where the hell you are. So over 10 schools, I had no idea where I was. And but I was in a secondary modern school in Stockton. Cut long story short, the best thing I could do fundamentally was art. And I was quite special at art, really. And my interest was unusual, and so I paint a lot at home, draw a lot at home, didn't go out to dances, so I think my parents thought I was peculiar, and I tended to paint all the time, and that got me into art school. So I went to the West Hollywood College of Art. From there I went to the Royal College of Art, and that now I'm starting to really move, because I got an expectation of the fact that whilst I adored art and fine art and all the aspects of design, my obsession came with film by whatever was local. My fodder of, film stuff to look at was all Hollywood, because that's all there was. There was no alternative cinema. There are no schools for directors. And I hadn't really thought about ever thought about the idea how on earth I could become a director. I came out of the Royal College with I was a first class honours student and got a travelling scholarship, and so I was able to jump into New York for the first time and enter the world of Mad Men. You're wrestling with yourself every day if you're a painter. I felt that I was uneasy with that, and I felt I was much easier having a target, and advertising established that for me, gave me a target, you know, and problems to answer, and I'm kind of good at that. Now at 25, 26, and I'm thinking, I'm working very, very hard at BBC. I love them dearly, but after tax, I'm taking home about 75 quid a week for doing live TV and half killing myself. When I'm doing a television commercial, I'm receiving £100 on my hand at the end of the day. There's something dramatically wrong here. And I'd formed RSA I was 27, and I formed RSA and it went whoop, it just took off. And so I was in business of advertising. I never thought about it for 10, 12 years, because when you're having a good time, you don't, you know, and you're doing well, you don't really think about it. And it was only 10 years later, suddenly I realized I haven't done a film. France has made a film called, I've got Apocalypse Now. And I tracked it down Heart of Darkness. I wanted to do my first film, Heart of Darkness, completely unrealistic. But I think that's what I want to do. And we tracked it down and found that it had already been taken by a person called Francis Ford Coppola. So I didn't really know who that was at that point. So then, damn, so we've got to find something else. So we then found a sketch for a much larger novel, which was called The Duelist. I've been told, because the Jerry Vaughan Hughes that I'd found and met with and got on very well with, had written a beautiful screenplay on The Duelist. He'd already done another one for me called The Gunpowder Plot. We pushed that to the limits, almost wrung it dry and couldn't get it going. The Duelist seemed to be a little bit less ambitious. And so I traveled, and I was told that go to Hallmark Hall of Fame, Chicago. Then look on this is a very interesting TV piece. They loved the script. I flew out there, met with him. When I got there, he said, but it's not for us. He said, why don't you make this into a movie? So I thought, okay, so I flew from Chicago to Los Angeles, checked into one of the hotels there and just picked up the phone and started. That's what I did. And then got so far and got a little bit of interest and then couldn't get any further, and I had to return to England. I got 2 cast members. I then picked up the phone and asked David Putnam to help me. And David Putnam, who was the man, the producer in England at that particular moment, had got Alan Parker going, Bugsy, and got Adrian Lyne going, Foxes, right? So I was now absolutely riddled with anxiety. So I called him up. We met, and he was quite surprised. I think the script was so good. And he made a call to help me. Paramount fundamentally said yes. Ironically, somebody at Cannes, this is how it works, had seen The Duelist, and how he connected the fact that I might be a good idea for Alien, God only knows. But The Duelist had impressed him, and then he'd called Fox. They looked at it and liked it a lot, but they didn't know how to handle it, how to release it, because there's no star, and it's you know, it can be perceived as a bit of an art movie. I never thought it was an art movie at all. It was very straightforward narrative. It's a Western. And I watched it fade away pretty quick and thought, well, maybe the enjoyment, the thrill is in the doing of it, not in the end result, not in the aftermath, because it's bloody hard work, and at the end of it, all I did was lose money, because as a completion bond person, I had to fork out a little bit of money because it rained for 58 days. So that was another lesson. And then out of the blue came this thing called Alien. And being an art director background, I knew exactly what to do, because I was kind of edging in towards a bit of heavy metal. The very good comic strip by Giorgio Mobius metal hurlant or heavy metal, and that's why I first became aware of Mobius. And so I connected the idea of Alien with Mobius. That kind of makes sense to the extent that as soon as I knew I was going to get Alien, I read the script, and I knew immediately I wanted to do it. I waited for 5:30 that afternoon, called 20th Century Fox, 9:30 in the morning their time, said, I'll love it, I'll do it. And there was this long silence, said, hang on. And said, well, somebody else came on, and then they said, where are you now? I said, I'm in London. Oh, when can you be here? I said, you send me a ticket, I'll leave tonight. I said, oh, I just want to make it. Any changes? I said, absolutely not. I know exactly what to do here, knock it out of the ballpark. And no changes. They all looked at each other, they loved the fact that I want no changes. It's another thing with, you can turn your first conversation, you don't watch it on a go project, into a development deal. Just say I love it. I think it was tricky because I didn't realize I was coming in with something which was an oddball world, and it was an evolution from Alien as well, oddly enough, and it's definitely an evolution where I was influenced by Mobius, I think, and I really took on board what he did and was completely influenced by everything from the characters to the clothing, and he was definitely an influence on me on Blade Runner. And I think by doing that, it was my first film in Hollywood, where I wanted it raining, I wanted it to be at night, I wanted everything to be moody, and it just irritated the shit out of me. And me trying to do it and say, well, that's what I want, at least I stuck to my guns, and got thrashed regularly. I, as a director, want to be surprised in a good way. And so that I've evolved very much in that direction. So now I'm coming up on a film that I'm going to produce called Thelma and Louise. And again, I am now in the driving seat, so I've asked 5 directors to do it. And 5 directors turned me down. 3 of them said, I've got problems with the women. I said, you meant to have problems with the women, that's the whole point of the goddamn movie. I said, because these women have a voice. And the voice may make you feel uncomfortable, but that's your problem, not theirs. So there was one of those kind of discussions. And then eventually one day an actress that was being interviewed, an important actress, said to me, why don't you come to your senses as new director? And after that I went, she might be right. So then I went away, and that's when I decided to do it. And at that moment in time, Thelma had been pursuing the office, saying, I want to come and read, I want to do this role. And I met with her, and actually she was clearly it, you know. And then I met with Susan, who was, you know, is a marvelous American actress, and Louise was born. And out of that, I think I had probably one of the better times I've ever had making a movie, making that film. I cast very, very carefully. I cast really well. And part of the process when I'm casting is a read for me doesn't mean anything. What's important is who they are as a person. So when I'm actually interviewing someone for a film, I usually talk to them for an hour before I even mention the role or get them to read. I just want to know who they are. By the time, once you've done that, you've relaxed, and then they know it's playtime. You're going to actually experiment, and therefore they feel free to show you stuff. The casting process was always difficult for me then, because I didn't really know who was out there. I want to see everybody in the box. I think I saw everybody in America for Alien, which I think drove my producers crazy, because they were suggesting people, frankly, I'd never heard of, people from television like Yaphet Kotto and people like that, and Harry Dean Stanton, who I wasn't really that aware of, but when I met him, I loved him, yeah. And then Sigourney, I had to find a new person, and Sigourney was a real find, actually. She was really impressive. And then from that, in the casting process, I was again looking at new people. And even Harrison Ford to me was kind of new. And I knew that Ford was now with Stephen and with George doing Indiana Jones. So I figured these two are closing on this guy called Indiana, is going to be called Indiana Jones. I guarantee he's going to be a star. So I met him one night selling his gear. He came into town and met me. He actually came straight off the set. So he was the hat, the leather jacket. And I said, you want to do the movie? That's how I cast him. To the extent that in those days when the people I was with said, who's Harrison Ford? And I said, well, Harrison Ford is the guy flying that round space vehicle in, what's it called, Millennium Falcon? Oh, I said, but he's going to be Indiana Jones. So that was a good choice. Then Blade Runner didn't play too well. So that's the next lesson. Just when you think you've got it, you ain't got nothing. My life has been traveling backwards and forwards, and wherever I do film, that takes me. I've got this thing about North Africa. I think I've done 4 films in big ones in North Africa. We did Black Hawk Down, I did Kingdom of Heaven, I did Body of Lies, I did the first act, or the middle act of Gladiator in Ouarzazate when it was still a relatively quiet place. I go back on everything I learned at art school. Every day, I still use it. I'm upstairs right now with the production designer planning what I'm doing in 3 weeks' time. And it's all about white sheets of paper, pens and drawing. Because the script's done, called McCarthy Screenplay. And so that's a given. The actors are all cast, so now it's what's it going to look like? And I use everything I learned every day at art school. Interesting. When I'm doing a movie, and the way we planned Prometheus was, before we got the big unit together and the big art department, I persuaded Fox, who wisely said, look, you give me an R&D budget, research and development budget, a couple $100,000, to hire my production designer and 4 digital artists. We'll sit in that room in my office over there and actually design the whole film in the way it looks before we get to the expensive part, which is suddenly crewing up with 300 personnel. And that's what we did. So we planned it there. So every day was in drawing what the landscape will be, therefore where will it be, even to designing and looking at the way people, what they wear, what the ship looks like inside, what the ship looks like outside. And it's all drawn down. Digital work today is like photographs. You can look at it and it's like a photograph of the finished thing. And that was one of the most, it was a new direction for me, and I really loved doing it. I loved re-engaging with special effects and digital effects. Well, my process has always been visual. I've come from visual direction, visual angle, being an art director, and I used to think that because I was always getting criticised for the films being too visual, till I realised, well, actually, that's what we're dealing in pictures. I said, so, eventually I realised that I had an advantage by having an eye rather than it being a disadvantage. And consequently, I think it was thought that I neglected actors a little bit, and mainly because I also operated on opera. I was an operator on Alien, Duels. Wasn't allowed to on Blade Runner because I was in Hollywood and I was the new kid in the block, so they wouldn't let you do that. But the union wouldn't allow it, but I had a great cameraman with a very good crew, so I was very happy with what I got with that. Come back to the UK, I did Legend, so operating on that. Operating to me was very important. I learned to advertise because it gets you there fast, quick. And contrary to what people say, is because you're behind the camera, the actor is cut off. That's absolute horseshit. Every actor adores it if you've got your eye with you friends. It's a bit like working as a still photographer. I'm on you like that, and I'm talking to you, I'm seeing right into you. Actors like that. So I started to evolve my own style in terms of how I deal with actors, how I rehearse, how I pull him into the process. Because to me, I think my job as a director, the way I do it, is as a partnership. The most digital film I did in Marshall was probably on Robin Hood. Oh no, sorry, Gladiator. He doesn't bother with that. And I don't bother him with that. I can explain to him that when you walk in this Colosseum, there's only going to be 40% there, but we built 40% Colosseum. And I didn't do 5 stories, but I did 4 stories, so it's full scale. And then you track it, and then that first spin around will show the whole arena, which is a pretty marvelous digital, event. It's amazing what they actually pulled off. The Mill in London. And he doesn't need to know that. An actor will look at it. Don't forget, they're looking at the film crew most of the time. They're not looking at the rest of the set. No, well, if they're looking at an actor and they're looking at the film crew, they're out of it. Well, they should be. Well, I paid for the screenplay. I was a completion bond. I'd hunted in Hollywood, flown out there, met with Keith Carradine and Harvey Keitel, where Keith was very amenable to that and said he was very fascinated by what that was, what the character meant. And Keith was more of a classical actor who was already able to cross that boundary and say, well, I'll really work on the accent, we'll come down middle kind of ground on English. And Harvey was still in the street, with Scorsese and De Niro, because he'd already done Mean Streets. And the first thing that Harvey said to me when I walked in, he said, "You must be out of your fucking mind."
Okay, Keith, could you just hit the map, please, up? Okay, just boom, crunch. Okay, there's a general rush that won't be there yet, so there'll be a beat later, okay?
You want me to play a huzzah? How on earth can I play a huzzah? But the upshot was, at the end of the day, I got him. And that's why I learned that by now I know that determination is everything, really. Whatever, you just don't take no for an answer. I just didn't take no for an answer. I went out there with a week's clothing. I was there 2 months in Hollywood waiting. This was my introduction to the process in Hollywood. You're never going to get a straight answer immediately, and that's part of the process. That's what it is. And you got to sit it out or argue it out, and that's what there was a whole new learning process going to happen once I'm in Hollywood. But as soon as I'm closing on Aliens, suddenly I've got everybody and their mother looking over your shoulder. So now you're witnessing and feeling the real pressure of what will be a possible film for a studio where they have high expectations. And in those days, the budget was only 4.2 million. But the most valuable thing I did, drawing from what I could do, I went home and I storyboarded the whole movie in 3 weeks. Then I flew back with the boards. I've still got them. It's this thick and big boards. And they stared at the boards, and I think they suddenly realized that they had something much bigger here. Because the budget went from 4.2 to 8.2. It jumped $4 million. And initially, they weren't going for stars actually, because I think they felt that the science fiction film may be the star. And also I'd been introduced to Giga, and I know they'd been afraid of Giga being a little bit too extreme and obscene. And I said, well, actually, H.R. Giga is, at this moment, a little touch of genius. I'll go and see him. So I flew down to Switzerland, met him. He didn't want to do it. He didn't want to fly. So we'll bring him by train. The shot was we got him to come in by train. He lived in the pub in Shepperton Studios for 10 months. And he said, this is fine for me. He lived in a little room above the pub in Shepperton. For the most part, I loved everything because it was all Hollywood, and the best of it would be, James Dean would be. Dean did 2 or 3 pretty good movies, and John Wayne. I adored westerns. I've never done a western. I adored almost any western. Some great westerns done those days. Well, there seemed to be, because it was all kind of new and magical and terrific. I never got to see alternative cinema until I came to the Royal College, and that would be 1957. maybe 56, where I suddenly discovered the National Film Theatre. The standout guys were Kurosawa, Orson Welles, Bergman, everything way back to Summer with Monica, not just Seventh Seal and all that stuff, Virgin Spring, those things. And of course, Hollywood is the big business, and the rest is alternative cinema. And the ideal thing, and I had no idea what I wanted to do, and I felt that David Lean straddled the fence. He kind of did both. You know, Great Expectations is kind of a perfect film. I don't know anyone who doesn't really want to see a good movie. I think they get tired of seeing bad movies. So that's the wear-out factor when you go and see rubbish. And I think the problem today is that we're making so many movies. We're making more movies than ever before. So to keep the standard is pretty tricky, pretty difficult. So filmmaking and getting bums on seats, which I still consider what I have to do, with the budgets of today, I want to make sure I put bums on seats. So I've got to tell a good yarn. If you're going to bury yourself in your own private attic, a lot of people ain't going to go and see it, and you're not going to last that long. So I do tend to come from the school of that direction.